The void of space rippled with the emergence of the Zarkon battle cruiser Devourer, its obsidian hull gleaming with generations of conquered worlds. Captain Cryak's mandibles clicked with anticipation. Planetary designation, Hexar 372, was supposed to be a simple acquisition. Mineral-rich, atmospherically hostile, completely uninhabited. The ship's primary sensor array hummed to life, its quantum-enhanced probes scanning the planet's surface. Standard protocol dictated a comprehensive sweep before invasion. Identify resources, map terrain, calculate subjugation probability. What the sensors returned made the entire bridge crew freeze. Impossible, muttered Sub-Commander Vexnar, mandibles twitching in confusion. The holographic display showed a single structure nestled in a valley of razor-sharp silicate formations. Surrounding it was a landscape that should have been instantly lethal, atmospheric pressure fluctuating between crush and vacuum, radiation levels that would sterilize most known biological entities, ground temperature oscillating between molten and absolute zero. And there, in the middle of this planetary nightmare, sat a structure. Not a fortified bunker, not a military outpost, but something that looked suspiciously like a research station was that asterisk a greenhouse asterisk? The first reconnaissance drone dropped through the planet's chaotic atmosphere, stabilizers working overtime to compensate for winds that could shred steel. Its camera feed revealed something that would be discussed in Zarkon military academies for generations. A human. A single human, wearing what appeared to be a modified environment suit that looked like it had been assembled from salvaged parts. And she was asterisk gardening asterisk. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was perfectly aware of the massive warship hanging in the sky. She'd been tracking its approach for the past 17 minutes, plenty of time to prepare. The noise-canceling headphones weren't just for blocking out the harsh planetary sounds, but also to help her concentrate on the delicate genetic sequencing. She was running on her latest crop of radiation-resistant wheat. She looked up, gave a casual wave to the obviously confused drone, and reached for her smartphone. "Control," she said into her communication device. "We've got incoming. Looks like the Zarkon. Preliminary scan suggests a standard conquest protocol. Estimated time to first ground assault, approximately 47 minutes. The response came from Dr. Marcus Chen, her research partner currently orbiting the planet in their modified research vessel. "Want me to prep the welcome package?" Elena's lips curled into a smile that would have terrified the Zarkon if they could have seen it. "Oh, absolutely." Back on the Devourer, Captain Cryax was experiencing something utterly foreign to the Zarkon command structure. Confusion. Their species had conquered thousands of worlds. They had technological superiority that made most galactic civilizations look like primitive tribes. They had weapons that could crack planets. And here was a single human, alone, seemingly unconcerned, gardening. The preliminary reports continued to stream in. The structure wasn't just a research station. It was a marvel of improvised engineering. Solder collectors that seemed to be made from repurposed ship components. A hydroponic system that was producing vegetation in an environment that should have been completely sterile. Communication arrays that looked like they'd been assembled from spare parts, and sheer human determination. "Scanner," Cryax ordered, mandibles clicking with growing irritation. "I want to know everything about this human." The sensor sweep returned data that made no sense. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, 38 years old, independent researcher, no official government affiliation. Published work in xenobiology, planetary adaptation, and extreme environment engineering. Multiple patents, 0 military record, and somehow, impossibly, she was alive on a planet that should have killed her within seconds of arrival. The first wave of invasion shuttles began to prep. Standard Zarkon protocol. Overwhelming force, quick subjugation, minimal resource expenditure. Elena looked up from her garden, pulled off her headphones, and spoke into her communication device. "Marcus, start the music. I think our guests are about to arrive." In the greenhouse, something that was definitely not a standard agricultural system began to hum with anticipation. The invasion of XR-372 was about to get very interesting. The first Zarkon ground team materialized with surgical precision, their quantum displacement technology allowing them to bypass most known defensive systems. Captain Krax had selected his most elite squad, biomechanically enhanced warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds between them. Their armor was a marvel of adaptive technology, capable of withstanding radiation, extreme temperatures, and kinetic impacts that would liquefy most organic beings. They expected a quick subjugation. They got something entirely different. The moment their quantum signatures stabilized, the team discovered the first anomaly. The ground beneath their feet was alive in a way no planetary surface should be. Microsensors embedded in the silicate terrain began to react, shifting and realigning with a precision that suggested something between engineering and organic intelligence. Sub-Commander Vrel, the team's tactical specialist, was the first to notice. Something's wrong. He clicked into the team's communication channel. These geological formations, they're responding to our presence. Before anyone could respond, the first trap sprung. What looked like innocuous rock formations suddenly extruded crystalline tendrils that moved with impossible speed. These weren't simple geological growths. They were engineered defense mechanisms. The crystalline structures didn't just block movement. They conducted precise electromagnetic pulses that began systematically disrupting the team's advanced combat suits. "Impossible," muttered Drac, the team's heavy weapons specialist, as his suit's primary systems began to flicker and fail. From a distance, inside her research station, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the live feed with a mixture of scientific curiosity and mild amusement. "Marcus," she spoke into her communication device, "looks like the terrain adaptations are working better than our simulation models predicted." Dr. Marcus Chen's voice crackled back. "The biomimetic algorithm is more responsive than we expected. Those crystal formations are pulling data directly from the invaders' suit emissions, constructing counter-responses in real time." The Zarkon ground team was experiencing something completely outside their extensive combat training. Each defensive response was learning. The terrain wasn't just a passive environment. It was an active, adaptive system that was analyzing their technology, their movement patterns, their very method of invasion. Vrel attempted to activate his squad's primary weapon systems. Nothing. The electromagnetic field generated by the crystal formations had created a precise interference pattern that rendered their most advanced technology useless. "Retreat," he ordered, but even movement became a challenge. The ground itself seemed to be working against them, micro-adjustments making each step a battle against an environment that was actively hostile. Inside her greenhouse, Elena was doing something that looked mundane, but was actually extraordinarily complex. She was gardening. But this was no ordinary cultivation. Each plant had been genetically modified. Each microorganism carefully engineered. The entire ecosystem was a single, massive defensive algorithm. The Zarkon had invaded worlds. They had conquered civilizations, but they had never encountered a world that was itself a weapon. A small drone, cobbled together from mining equipment and what appeared to be spare communication array parts, lifted from the greenhouse. Its path was calculated with the same precision that guided the crystal formations. It wasn't a combat drone. It was a data collection drone. "Fascinating," Elena muttered, adjusting her headphones. "First contact protocols are proceeding exactly as modeled." On the Devourer, Captain Krax watched in mounting horror as his elite ground team, the most feared invasion unit in the Zarkon Imperium, was systematically neutralized not by weapons, but by a planetary defense system that seemed to think and adapt with living intelligence. This was no ordinary world. This was no ordinary human. And the invasion had only just begun. The diplomatic vessel Sovereign Decree dropped into orbit with all the pompous majesty the Zarkon could muster. This was no longer a military mission. This was a diplomatic intervention. 3 of the most senior bureaucratic administrators in the Zarkon Imperium had been dispatched to remove the human problem through the most devastating weapon in their arsenal: administrative procedure. Administrator Krulnax adjusted his ceremonial carapace, each segment polished to reflect centuries of bureaucratic tradition. He carried with him 17 separate legal documents, each backed by galactic charter laws, interstellar property regulations, and conquest protocols that had been refined over millennia of imperial expansion. What he didn't know was that Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been preparing for this moment her entire career. The first communication request came through standard diplomatic channels. Elena accepted the call from her greenhouse, still wearing dirt-stained gloves, and what appeared to be noise-canceling headphones playing some form of ancient Earth music. Dr. Rodriguez, Administrator Krulnax began, his translation matrix rendering his clicks and chirps into precise bureaucratic language. "We are here to discuss your immediate removal from planetary designation XR372. Elena didn't even look up from the plant she was pruning. "Which specific removal protocol are you invoking?" she asked casually. The question caught the administrator off guard. Most species would have been intimidated. Most would have begun pleading or negotiating. Instead, she was asking for specific legal terminology. "Galactic Expansion Directive 7 Alpha." Krulnax responded confidently, which clearly states that any non-indigenous settlement on a resource-rich planetary body is subject to immediate imperial reclamation. A smile played across Elena's lips. Interesting. Would that be the 7 Alpha revised in 2389, or the original 7 Alpha from 2312? Because there's a rather significant difference in the interpretation of indigenous based on the specific language used in the revision. Dr. Marcus Chen's voice crackled over her communication device. "She's doing the lawyer thing again," he muttered. What followed was less a diplomatic negotiation and more a legal demolition. The Lena began producing documentation that made the Zarkon administrator's carefully prepared case look like a child's crayon drawing. Research permits, ecological survey authorizations, mineral exploration licenses. Each document was not just valid. It was meticulously valid. She had 17 different legal claims to the planet, each more ironclad than the last. Some were scientific research exemptions. Others were mineral exploration permits. One was actually a failed colonization attempt from a minor galactic species that she had legally inherited through a Byzantine series of property transfer agreements. "But this is impossible," Krulnax sputtered, his mandibles clicking in increasing agitation. No single researcher could have this many legitimate claims. Elena finally looked directly at the communication screen. "I'm an independent researcher, Administrator. My job is solving impossible problems. Generating 17 overlapping planetary claims is basically a Tuesday for me." The truly terrifying part for the Zarkon was how casual she was about it. This wasn't a heated argument. This was a woman explaining something as mundane as a recipe. Each legal argument was a precision instrument. Where the Zarkon expected emotional pleading or military resistance, they found something far more devastating: bureaucratic perfection. "I'll need you to specify which of my 17 claims you believe gives you grounds for removal," Elena continued, now switching to pruning a plant that looked like it was part botanical specimen, part advanced sensor array. "And I'll need that in triplicate, notarized, with full citation of the specific galactic charter sections you're challenging." Administrator Krulnax realized, with a growing sense of existential dread, that they were no longer conducting a diplomatic negotiation. They were being professionally dismantled. The invasion of XR372 had just entered a new, utterly unexpected phase, and humanity's most dangerous weapon wasn't a weapon at all. It was paperwork. The Zarkon Intelligence Division had never been more confused. What had begun as a simple planetary conquest had transformed into a galaxy-wide investigation that was unraveling everything they thought they knew about human expansion. Director Zarks pulled up the holographic map, each pinpoint representing a human presence that defied all logical patterns of colonization. It wasn't a unified empire. It wasn't a coordinated effort. It was something far more terrifying. A species of individual agents, each turning impossibly hostile environments into functional habitats. Planetary designation Krell-9. A methane world where a human research team had constructed a floating research station using what appeared to be recycled shipping containers and experimental carbon conversion technology. The station not only survived but was actively improving the planetary ecosystem. Radiation Zone XM Delta. A human xenobiologist had transformed a radiation-bathed moon into a partially habitable research site. Her modifications weren't just about survival. They were about understanding. Sensor logs showed she spent more time collecting data than protecting herself, as if the lethal radiation was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. The gas giant Helios-7, a human mining consortium, had developed floating extraction platforms that were more advanced than anything in the known galaxy. They hadn't just adapted to the extreme conditions, they turned them into an opportunity. Each report was more impossible than the last. "This makes no sense," muttered Subdirector Vren, reviewing the latest intelligence brief. "Humans aren't a unified species. They don't have a central government controlling these expansions. Each of these sites is independent, run by individuals or small teams." The truly disturbing part was the purpose. These weren't military outposts. They weren't resource extraction sites. They were research stations. Humans seemed to view the most hostile environments in the galaxy as nothing more than interesting problems to be solved. Dr. Elena Rodriguez wasn't an anomaly. She was part of a broader pattern. A classified communication arrived from the diplomatic corps that had failed to remove Elena from XR-372. The legal documentation she had produced was being studied in bureaucratic circles as a form of warfare unto itself. 17 different, perfectly valid claims to a single planetary body. It was becoming a case study in administrative defense. The intelligence analysts began to piece together a disturbing profile. Humans didn't conquer planets. They understood them. Where other species saw obstacles, humans saw opportunities. Where most would see a lethal environment, a human would see a research grant waiting to happen. On a communication network typically used for imperial military dispatches, a joke began to spread. How do you know a human is about to arrive on your planet? It's already there. What made it worse was the apparent casualness of it all. These weren't military expeditions. These were researchers, scientists, explorers who treated planetary conquest as something between a scientific challenge and a mild curiosity. Director Zargs pulled up the file on Dr. Elena Rodriguez again. Published papers, patents, research grants, a history of turning the impossible into the mundane. Her latest research proposal, submitted casually between her defense of XR-372, suggested developing agricultural techniques for planets that currently had zero chance of supporting life. The Zarkon were beginning to understand something truly terrifying. Humans didn't need a unified empire. Each human was an empire unto themselves. The communication from Dr. Rodriguez's research partner came through, almost as an afterthought. "By the way," Dr. Marcus Chen's message read, "Elena's thinking of expanding her research to the obsidian zones. Apparently, she finds the atmospheric conditions interesting." Director Zarks looked at the galactic map. The human pinpoints were growing. Slowly, methodically, each one a small, impossible victory. The invasion of XR-372 was looking less like an isolated incident and more like a warning. The Zarkon Technology Division spent exactly 72 standard galactic hours attempting to comprehend the technological systems discovered on XR-372. What they found defied every principle of advanced engineering they understood. Dr. Krellnex, the division's lead analyst, stared at the holographic reconstruction of Elena's communication array. It shouldn't work. By all known physical and technological principles, The device was an impossible assemblage of mismatched components that looked like it had been constructed by a particularly creative child with a box of random electronic parts. Solar collectors made from repurposed mining drone panels. A communication relay built using what appeared to be a modified agricultural monitoring system. Quantum entanglement processors cobbled together from discarded medical diagnostic equipment. "It's not just functional," Krellnex muttered, mandibles clicking in frustration. "It's optimized." The truly terrifying aspect was the philosophy behind the technology. Where Zarkon engineering pursued perfection through uniformity, human technology seemed to pursue perfection through adaptation. Each component was a jury-rigged solution that somehow worked better than any precision-engineered alternative. A deeper analysis of Dr. Rodriguez's research station revealed layers of technological improvisation that bordered on the mystical. Her environmental control systems weren't just adaptive. They were alive in a way no artificial system should be. Biological algorithms intertwined with technological components, creating a hybrid system that could respond to environmental changes faster than any known computer. Dr. Marcus Chen's communication suddenly burst through their analysis systems. "You're looking at it wrong," his message read. "It's not technology. It's a conversation with the environment." The Zarkon tech team discovered something even more disturbing in Alina's primary research logs. She wasn't just adapting to the environment, she was teaching it. Her genetic modification techniques went beyond simple biological engineering. She was developing ecosystems that could *learn*. One particularly baffling system caught their attention. What looked like a standard hydroponics array was actually a complex neural network. The plants weren't just growing. They were processing information. Each leaf was a sensor. Each root was a data transmission point. "Impossible," whispered a junior analyst, "but it's more efficient than our quantum processing systems." The defensive systems were equally mind-bending. When the Zarkon had first attempted to land ground teams, the planet's terrain had responded with a level of intelligence that suggested something between advanced robotics and living organism. Crystal formations that could analyze and counter technological emissions, electromagnetic fields that could selectively neutralize specific technological frequencies. Alina's research notes revealed the core of her approach. "Technology isn't about controlling the environment," one entry read. "It's about communicating with it." The Zarkon began to understand that they weren't dealing with a technological system. They were dealing with a philosophical approach to existence that transcended their understanding of technology, biology, and engineering. A side note in one of her research logs caught a senior analyst's attention. A casual mention of a future project developing communication systems for planets with zero known technological infrastructure. Not as a challenge, not as a mission, but as something she might work on over a weekend. Director Zarix received the final report with a sense of growing existential dread. Humans weren't just technologically advanced. They were technologically creative. Where the Zarkon saw systems to be controlled, humans saw conversations to be started. She turned a hostile planet, the report concluded, into a research assistant. The invasion of XR-372 was looking less like a military failure and more like a fundamental misunderstanding of what technology could be. The Zarkon Psychological Warfare Division approached their mission with millennia of proven tactics. They had broken civilizations with nothing more than precisely calculated communication frequencies, mimetic warfare algorithms, and neural disruptive sound patterns that could induce existential despair in most known sentient species. Their target, Dr. Alina Rodriguez. Their objective, complete psychological destabilization. What they didn't understand was that they were bringing sophisticated psychological warfare tools to a confrontation with someone who considered mental resilience a form of performance art. The first wave of psychological attacks began with carefully crafted transmissions designed to induce existential doubt. Complex mathematical sequences that would typically shatter the cognitive stability of most intelligent beings. Harmonic frequencies calculated to trigger deep-seated survival anxieties. Alina Rodriguez listened to the transmission while watering her genetically modified radiation-resistant wheat, humming what appeared to be an ancient Earth song from something called classic rock. "Marcus," she spoke casually into her communication device. "They're using the Carlon Cognitive Dissonance Protocol. Circa 2312, if I'm not mistaken. Bit outdated." Dr. Marcus Chen's response crackled back. "Want me to play the counter sequence?" "Nah," Elena replied, adjusting her noise-canceling headphones. "I've got something better." The Zarkon watched in mounting confusion as their sophisticated psychological warfare simply failed to penetrate. Where most species would show signs of mental breakdown, Dr. Rodriguez appeared to be treating the entire invasion like an interesting experimental data point. Their next transmission was a more direct approach, a carefully constructed mimetic weapon that had broken entire civilizations, a series of visual and auditory stimuli designed to induce a complete psychological collapse, triggering every known fear response in sentient beings. Elena's response was to broadcast an old playlist of what she called motivational music across all frequencies. Somehow, impossibly, the Zarkon psychological warfare team found themselves listening to something called Eye of the Tiger and feeling inexplicably confused. "Is she?" Mocking us, asked Sub-Commander Farrell, his mandibles twitching in disbelief. The psychological warfare team's analysis revealed something truly terrifying. Dr. Rodriguez wasn't just resistant to their techniques, she was enjoying them. Each psychological attack was being carefully logged, analyzed, and seemingly treated as an interesting research opportunity. One of her research logs captured the essence of her approach. Psychological warfare is just another form of communication. You just have to know how to listen. The Zarkon had weaponized fear for millennia. Humans, it seemed, had weaponized humor. Their most sophisticated attack involved a complex transmission designed to induce a sense of absolute isolation. The kind of psychological weapon that had broken civilizations, making individuals feel utterly alone in the universe. Elena's response was to set up an impromptu dance party in her research station, complete with disco lights cobbled together from emergency beacon components. Sometimes, she told Marcus over the communication system, "You just have to dance it out." The Zarkon Psychological Warfare Division submitted their final report with a recommendation that bordered on existential surrender. How do you break the psychology of a species that treats psychological warfare as an entertaining challenge? Their concluding analysis was brutally simple. Humans do not experience psychological warfare. They'd weaponize it. Director Orcs read the report and realized that the invasion of XR-372 was no longer just a military problem. It was a fundamental challenge to everything the Zarkon understood about psychological conflict. Somewhere on the planet, Dr. Elena Rodriguez continued her research, still humming, still dancing, completely unaware that she had just rewritten the entire galactic understanding of psychological resilience. The full might of the Zarkon Imperium descended upon XR-372 like a storm of technological fury. 300 invasion vessels, quantum displacement weaponry, molecular disintegration cannons, gravitational compression fields that could reduce entire mountain ranges to cosmic dust. Captain Krax watched from the bridge of the Devourer *, confident that this time there would be no resistance, no diplomatic complications, just pure, overwhelming force. What they didn't know was that Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been preparing for this moment since the first reconnaissance drone entered the planet's atmosphere. The invasion began precisely as Elena predicted. Marcus Chen's voice crackled over her communication system. Incoming Wave 1. 17 minutes, 32 seconds after initial long-range scan. You're getting predictable, Zarkon. Elena adjusted her noise-canceling headphones, switching to a playlist she had specifically curated for planetary defense. "Let's dance," she muttered. The first wave of Zarkon assault pods hit the planet's atmosphere, and immediately discovered that the atmosphere itself was a weapon. Microscopic organisms, genetically engineered to interact with the alien technology, began to systematically neutralize the invasion vehicles, Not by destroying them, but by reprogramming them. Assault pods suddenly redirected. Weapon systems transformed into communication arrays. Molecular disintegration cannons began broadcasting ancient Earth music, a mixture of classical compositions, and what the Zarkon would later learn was called punk rock. "I've been working on this for years," Elena told Marcus, her voice calm as she continued tending to her radiation-resistant wheat. "Biomimetic technology that treats invasion protocols like a communication problem rather than a combat one." The planet's terrain came alive, not in a violent way, but in a manner that could only be described as strategic inconvenience. Crystal formations that could redirect energy weapons, electromagnetic fields that turned precision strikes into harmless light shows. The very ground became a complex, adaptive defense system. Mining drones, originally designed for resource extraction, were repurposed into a defense network. They moved with a coordination that suggested something between artificial intelligence and living organism. Each drone was a node in a planetary nervous system, responding to the invasion with a level of adaptability that defied traditional military understanding. "They're treating this like a military invasion," Elena observed, "when it's really just a complex systems interaction." The Zarkon discovered that their most advanced weapons were being systematically redesigned by the planet's defensive systems. Molecular disintegration cannons transformed into agricultural irrigation tools. Quantum displacement weaponry became communication relays. Captain Krax watched in mounting horror as his invasion force was not destroyed, but repurposed. It wasn't just a defense, it was a conversion. "This is impossible," he muttered, mandibles clicking in disbelief. On the ground, Elena Rodriguez continued her research, occasionally glancing at the holographic display, showing the planetary defense systems at work. To her, this was just another interesting research problem. The final blow came not from a weapon, but from a communication burst. Every Zarkon invasion vessel simultaneously received a research grant proposal. Detailed, meticulously sourced, peer-reviewed, proposing a collaborative study on planetary adaptation technologies. The invasion wasn't just stopped, it was academically redirected. As the Zarkon vessels began to retreat, Marcus Chen's voice came through Elena's communication system. "Want me to submit the follow-up research proposal?" Elena smiled. "Absolutely." The invasion of XR-372 was over, but humanity's unexpected approach to conflict was just beginning. The aftermath of XR-372 spread through galactic communication networks faster than any official dispatch could travel. It wasn't a story of military victory or diplomatic triumph. It was something far more complex, a narrative that would reshape how every species understood the concept of human expansion. In diplomatic circles, the Zarkon Imperium's retreat became a source of quiet, nervous humor. Invasion reports were replaced by academic collaboration proposals. Weapon system logs were filled with inexplicable instances of technological conversion rather than destruction. Dr. Elena Rodriguez became something between a legend and a cautionary tale. The first wave of galactic responses came from unexpected sources. Independent research stations began requesting copies of her planetary adaptation methodologies. Ecological restoration teams wanted to understand how she had transformed a seemingly uninhabitable world into a living, adaptive ecosystem. "It's not about conquering a planet," Elena would later tell a gathering of interstellar researchers. "It's about having a conversation with it." The Zarkon Intelligence Division compiled a comprehensive report that read more like a philosophical treatise than a military analysis. Humans, they concluded, were not a species that conquered worlds. They were a species that understood them. Captain Krax, previously the commander of the invasion force, found himself reassigned to a research position. His first official document was a collaborative research proposal with human ecological engineers, a fate that would have been unimaginable before XR-372. The galactic communication networks began to develop a new lexicon around human expansion. Where other species saw planets as resources to be extracted, humans saw them as complex systems to be understood. Where conventional military doctrine suggested conquest, humans proposed collaboration. Smaller galactic civilizations began to see humans in a new light. They weren't a unified empire. They were something far more dangerous, a species of individual problem solvers, each capable of turning the most hostile environment into an opportunity for research and growth. Dr. Marcus Chen, Alina's research partner, began receiving invitations from research stations across multiple star systems, not as a conqueror, not as a diplomat, but as a collaborator. The truly terrifying part for other species was the casualness of it all. Alina had defended an entire planet the way most people might solve a mildly interesting puzzle. Her research logs showed no sense of heroism, no grand narrative of resistance, just methodical, creative problem-solving. Zarkon military academies began to include the XR-372 incident as a case study, not in military tactics, but in adaptive thinking. Students were required to analyze how a single human researcher had transformed an entire invasion protocol into an academic collaboration. The planet itself became a research site. Scientists from multiple species began requesting permission to study the adaptive technologies Alina had developed. What had been a potential battlefield became an interstellar research hub. Every planet they conquered became a galactic joke, had one problem: a human already there. But it was more than a joke. It was a fundamental shift in understanding. In her research station, Dr. Alina Rodriguez continued her work. The invasion was just another interesting data point, another problem to be solved, another conversation to be started. Marcus's voice came through her communication system. "Hey, got an interesting proposal for the obsidian zones. Wanna take a look?" Alina smiled, adjusting her noise-canceling headphones. Absolutely. The universe, it seemed, was just getting interesting.